Welcome to chapter 4 of the book of Ecclesiastes. Inequalities of life. I'll read a little bit in the Greek and then we'll go through the chapter. Ke epistropsa ego, ke idon sympasis tas sycophantias tas genomenas hypo ton ilion, ke idu dakrion ton sycophantumenon, ke uk estin avtis o parakalon. And I turned and beheld all the extortions happening under the sun. Many people are extorted. A lot of elderly people are taken advantage of by hucksters who will cheat them out of their money by having them invest in things that don't turn out to be worth anything. And you also have people trying to extort people by sending emails and promising an inheritance if they answer the email, and gathering information on their personal information so they can extort money out of their checking account or whatever. All sorts of extortions going on. And Solomon saw that, so it was not something new. People were cheating people even back in those days. There's been stories written on novels and movies. I can think of, I think it was Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn, where the two men, there was a prince and a king and something like that, the Dauphin, and they were extorting, cheating people. And then there was a musical called The Music Man, where the man came into town and got all the people to give money for a band, for the kids to have a band, and but he would take the money and run. Except that town he was in that musical, he fell in love with marrying the librarian. So extortion has been going on, but he says, and behold, the tear of the ones being extorted, and there is not one comforting them. So if you're extorted and you lose your money, it's sort of, well, too bad for you. There's not much you can do. Police will try to find out, capture the extorter, but that's about it. It doesn't help you if you spent the money. And by the hands of ones extorting them was strength, and there is not one comforting them. And I praised all of the ones having died of the ones already dying, more than the living, as many as live until the present. And he looks at life as having problems. And the dead people, once you're gone from this life and you don't have a problem, and apparently this is what he's thinking, but he doesn't have the New Testament that we see the fire of everlasting punishment that Jesus talks about and came to deliver a person from. Solomon didn't see that, and we do. So we would know that, well, it might be an advantage to a person dying if he's going to heaven, but not if he's going into Hades. And better is he than these two, which not yet was born, which knew not all the evil action being done under the sun. So if you're not born, you're dead, you don't know what's going on, the bad things that are going on, and there are a lot of bad things going on today. And I beheld all the effort and all courage of action, mokthon, effort. It's a sort of a word that has a slightly negative tone to it, in that it takes effort. You're hard, it's working, it's difficult to do in the negative way. In the King James, the word mokthon only appears thrice, and all three places I use the word trouble, which you could exchange for it. You could say, and I beheld all the trouble and all courage of action. But in the New Testament, the three places that it was mentioned were all by Paul. 2 Corinthians 11:27, Paul says, in toil and trouble, which was mokthon, in sleeplessnesses often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in chilliness and nakedness, he found himself. And then in 1 Thessalonians 2:9, he says to the Thessalonians, for you remember, brothers, our toil and mokthon, our efforts, trouble. And then in 2 Thessalonians 3:8, he says to the Thessalonians again, nor freely did we eat bread from anyone, but in toil and mokthon, trouble or effort, night and day, working so as to not overburden any of you. And then it continues, for the same zeal of man is from his companion. Other people work and toil and go through the toil and trouble. And indeed, this is folly, and resolve is spirit. We all experience trouble, our effort. The foolish ones one embraces his hands and eats his own flesh, devours the things of his self, and doesn't have anything after devouring what he has. Better a handful full of rest than 2 handfuls full of trouble or effort, and resolve of spirit. And I turned, and I saw folly under the sun. There is one alone. Now in verse 8, he talks about the disadvantage of being by yourself, or one person. There is one alone, and there is not a second. And that's more or less he's describing with the subject. And indeed, there is not a son or indeed a brother to him. That's all the subject. And there is not a limit to all his effort. So it takes a lot of work for one person to do all the work. And indeed, his eye is not satisfied of riches, and saying, why do I make an effort and deprive my soul of goodness? And indeed, this is a folly and an evil distraction. I'm by myself, so I find myself having to do pretty much everything. I don't have enough. I'm not rich, so a lot of the things that I could hire somebody to do, I do myself. So I have a lot of trouble, a lot of effort, nobody to help me. I don't have a wife or a family of such. My son lives in Las Vegas, and his wife's going through surgery. So I think about, well, if anything happened to me, who would take care of me? Well, I know God would. He has so far. But Solomon's bringing this all out as far as the disadvantage of the one person. But then he gives the advantage of more than one, better the two over the one, in which there is to them a good wage in their effort. They accomplish a lot, more than the one person could. There are times when I can't do something. If I had somebody else to help me, then a wife would be great. But I don't, so, but here the advantage of the two. For if they should fall, the one shall raise his partner, so helping each other. But woe to him, to the one, whenever he should fall, that there should not be a second one to raise him. So again, like myself, worrying about if anything happened, he got sick. And if two should go to bed and heat themselves, then the one, how shall he heat himself? I suppose his idea is that two people warm each other and one person can't, even though, of course, you can with the blankets over and everything. And if one prevails against the one, then the two shall stand against him. So you have somebody to help and protect you. The wife has a husband to protect her if somebody comes against them, or if it was a brother or a son. And the three-stranded cord shall not quickly be ripped apart. Now, the three-stranded cord, I used to be a sailor, sailing a sailboat, and what you call a rope or a cord, we call the line. And you would pull the line to pull the sails in a certain direction, and the line was made out of generally a 3-stranded rope line. And I was able to weave the 3 pieces, two separate pieces, and you kind of unravel the 3 strands, and then you intertwine them like this, and then you go in and through, and you do it, and it goes down about 6 inches, and you have the line will come down, and you have like a little bump, and then it goes down to the regular line. Well, that they call it a splice, and that splice is actually stronger than the rest of the line is. So this is sort of what he's saying here. The 3-stranded cord or line, if it was a boat, shall not quickly be ripped apart. Better a needy and wise child than an older and foolish king who knows not to take heed any longer. So the rest of this chapter to the end is sort of talking about a foolish king. And then he says, for from out of the house of the prisoners he shall come forth to reign. Now, exactly what he's talking about, almost like some type of an asylum. He comes forth, he's old. And while even indeed one in his kingdom was needy, people have problems and he's not able to figure it out. And does that remind you of anybody and going on in 2022 being, we're almost in November the 1st. Oh, and I'm not going to go any further into that. I beheld all of the living walking under the sun, and with the young of the second generation, who shall stand in place of him? There is not a limit to all the people, even to all as many as were before them, and indeed the last shall not be glad in him. For even indeed this is folly and resolve of spirit, and they will not be glad in the foolish king. A lot of people are experiencing this foolish ruler and will continue experiencing it. Chapter 5, life's experiences. So Solomon is going to enlighten us on the life's experiences as he knows them in chapter 5, our next video seminar. Hope you'll join us. Until then, God bless.